Hey everybody, it's Brian and Al here from Summit Racing Equipment, and we have again one of our Friday live streams. Oftentimes with these things, noon Eastern Standard Time, and it's always hard to say, who we're going to have on, but it can be anybody from a manufacturer to a racer to a builder. It's all over the map, and today we have something very, very special because it's a person, actually a team of people that bring together really all three of those people. So here from FM3, we have Jimi Day and we have Optima Jim. Jim, you want to introduce yourself, and I guess both of you guys, if you want to tell us a little bit about, how you got into the business.
Jimmy, you go
ahead, Mac. Oh, all right. I'll go. I'll go first. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Jimi Day, and I'm the president and CEO of FM3 Performance Marketing and the Ultimate Street Car Association. I guess we're best known as event coordinators. We do a lot of event marketing and dynamic types of marketing events for aftermarket companies, including yourselves and Optima Batteries and some other big names throughout the industry. We've done some really, really neat events and been able to have the opportunity to partner with brands like Optima to put drivers in seats. That's what we really like to do. We feel like the best way to promote products and get them out to our marketplace is these dynamic events where drivers and cars come together. We really feel strongly that vehicles were meant to be driven. They were manufactured to be driven. And when we add those dynamic events or those dynamic driving things to events, we find that the events become a lot more effective and leave kind of a much more memorable impression. People like when brands coordinate with what they like to do. So that's what we do.
Absolutely. And Jimmy, one of the themes at Summit is we have a campaign we've run for last year and this year that'll continue in the future. And the theme of it is powered by enthusiasts. And I'm excited about you joining us today. I want to thank you for doing that, you and Optima Jim. But I think both of you are the epitome of that powered by enthusiasts idea, because you're just not an event coordinator and an event planner. You've got a long history in motorsports, One Lap of America, different autocross events. Can you tell us a little bit about your personal interest? Because I think it's fascinating, and then we'll have Optima Jim introduce himself as well.
Sure. Well, thanks for bringing that up, Al. I do have a personal interest in the automotive aftermarket because I am a passionate enthusiast, and it's kind of how we build our marketing programs. We feel like we are our own customer. And so we put together events that we would want to attend and have fun at as well. I've been very lucky. Many people know me as much for my vehicle as they do for who I am. I've got a 1969 AMX called AMXS, and it's a fairly unique vehicle because it's a bit off the beaten path. I debuted that car at SEMA back in 2011, and I really built that to be kind of the epitome of the ultimate street car. It is very streetable. It has air conditioning, a stereo. It has heated and air conditioned seats. But at the same time, that vehicle has run the One Lap of America. It has run the Sandhills Open Road Challenge. It's run the Silver State Classic Challenge. Wow. It's been a long hauler on the Hot Rod Power Tour. It's driven from Wisconsin to Texas, and it's driven from Pennsylvania to Monterey, California, all under its own power. I've put about real close to 40,000 miles on that car, and I've never had the heads off of it or cracked a valve cover. It's been so reliable. It's been a lot of fun. It's been in numerous magazines, literally thousands of websites, and it's something that I've put my heart and soul into, and kind of defines my personality. But we've learned, we incorporate a lot of what we learned by going to other events into our events, things that we like, things that we don't like, things that work well, things that don't work well. We learn a lot by going to other events just as much as we do our own events. And we try and take the best of the best from all of those other events and incorporate it into our events and treat our participants like we want to be treated when we go to an event.
It's interesting that you chose that car. I got into my first AMX when I was 89. I graduated in 1990 from high school, just to try to put this in perspective. And when I got in the thing, I'm like, thing didn't have a rear seat in it. It had black on white gauges. I mean, it was like my idea of a Corvette, really, except for this was a 2-seat car. It was a 390 car, the later ones had the 401s, just, I mean, incredible engines. So how did you decide on that car kind of fit your personality?
That's a great question. People ask me that all the time. When I was in high school, before I was able to drive, there was a small body shop. I grew up in a town of 600 people in central Illinois, little small town, but there was a body shop in town, and I would go over to that body shop after school or before school, and I would just work there for free, just because I wanted to be hanging around the cars and the people that were there, and I would sweep up the shop or do whatever jobs that they had. But a guy brought in a 69 AMX, much like the one that you just talked about. It was a 69 390 Go Pack car. It was red with white stripes, and I had never seen one before. And I was, even at, before high school and before I could drive, I got my first car when I was 14. But even before that, my dad was a car guy, and I knew a lot about cars. But having grown up in central Illinois, I had never seen an AMX. They didn't build them in huge quantities. In fact, right, the total production of those cars was under 20,000. So it's not, there weren't a lot of them. And when I saw that one for the first time, much like you, I was struck by the lines of the car, the long hood, short deck. It had some classic lines. It was a two-seater, and it was just a very unique car. And at that point in time, I just fell in love with that thing. I can't tell you any one thing about it. It was a combination of a lot of things. And I just told myself at some point in time, I want to have one of these cars. And so it took me a long time to get it, because that was in the early 80s. And I got this car in 2002. So it took me that long before I was finally able to get one. But once I had one, I knew I wanted to make it unique, and it just really worked out. And I still have the car to this day. We just drove it on it just went on our FM3 road trip Cars and Cones tour. So it's still out there, putting miles on it, still having fun with it.
That's awesome. Real quick, Optima Jim, what we're going to do is, first off, we have a few people that jumped in on the conversation. We've got Donnie and Kazia, Nick North, and Chris Keene talking about his Mustang. So for everybody out there watching us, we've got our fans, we've got our racers, who have joined us on the Optima event, USTA, and everything like that. Just free to drop in with your name and where you're from and a little bit about your car. And we're going to try to answer some of those questions a little later. Optima Jim, tell us about your background there, a little bit about cars.
My name is Jim McElvain, and I work for Optima Batteries, but my last name is not as easy to pronounce as Nutter, so I just go with Optima Jim or Day. You guys got some pretty easy last names. I have 16 years of Catholic education, so that means the closest I came to a shop class was Know Your Car with Sister Rotarius. Okay. And they canceled that because it wasn't a college preparatory class. It was just myself and my best friend, whose family owns Wisconsin's oldest Lincoln Mercury dealer. So I was always into cars, but kind of from a distance. My dad worked for Walker Muffler and Pipe, but he was a CPA and didn't know how to turn a wrench. And I ended up playing basketball, but I was always into cars. I ended up ordering a 99 Z28 and had it shipped straight to Lingenfelter for a 383. And so I hopped on the message boards pretty early. I was on CamaroZ28.com, probably 1999. Wow. And went head first into it from there, and actually struck up a friendship with a guy named Johnny Hunkins, who at the time was an editor at GM High Tech Performance Magazine. And the guys at CamaroZ28.com asked me to check him out because I lived in New Jersey and the magazine was based in New Jersey, and Hunkins was posting on their message board, and people were trying to figure out if it was really him or some whack job. And it turns out it was both. Nice. So he saw my writing on the forums and asked me if I'd like to write for the magazine. I told him I did, but I didn't know anything about cars. And he said, well, I was selling appliances at Best Buy before I got this job. So I started with event coverage. I was at the first Holly LS Fest and the second one.
Yep.
And I have pictures I took pictures of your car when you ran at the Ultimate Street Car Invitational. What was that, 2010?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I started writing for the magazines, and I was still playing, so maybe 1998 or 99. And then as happens with a lot of the magazine editors, they get hired away by the advertisers. Like Cameron Evans went to Redline, and Kevin McClellan. And so I struck up a friendship at a track event, at that point I had a 2002 Camaro that I was just messing around with at club track events. I was at Road America, and Cam Douglas had recently moved to Wisconsin from Colorado, and he had his Corvette at Road America for my club's track rental, and he blew it up. And my trailer is just down the road. I have a place within earshot of Road America, so I offered to tow him back to Milwaukee. And then we struck up a friendship, and I told him how much I liked driving, and I'd just done a couple of road trips out to go skiing on Lake Mead and just outside Las Vegas. He said, you haul stuff to Las Vegas? I said, yeah, I haul my ski boat to Vegas. So would you like to haul vehicles there for SEMA? I'm like, yeah, that's fine. And so that's how he got me into it. And it was on one of those trips where I was either hauling out or back, where he started talking about what Optima was doing digitally and how they needed some help, because there's a lot of conversations on the message boards and a lot of people that needed help. And you either have to kind of jump in head first or just stay out of the water altogether. And so they had stayed out of the water, and they wanted to jump in head first and help some folks. And then within a year of doing that, probably within a few months of doing that, Facebook decided they wanted everybody on Facebook, businesses and non-college students. So Facebook came along, and next thing I knew, I was managing Twitter and YouTube, and then the website and Pinterest and Instagram. And
wow.
It just kind of spiraled from there. And I've been working for them full time now for about 11 years. But always been interested in cars. When I retired from doing basketball stuff, I wanted to keep doing car stuff. I was just cheap, and I wanted somebody else to pay for it. And so I thought it would be the magazines. You know,
Or the reason they're working
yeah, we're all in the same boat, Jim.
Yeah, I went out. I did the Silver State. No, it was, I'm sorry, the Pony Express 130 open road race out in Nevada, and I hit the B-Body Nationals on that trip. And then, like, in between it, my wife and kids and I just vacationed out in Las Vegas, and the magazine stories paid for my whole trip. So that was kind of how I envisioned my life going forward. And then Optima got me sucked in and in way over my head.
Awesome.
That's excellent.
Jimmy, you take me back to 2010 there, real quick, and Al, you know, we want to talk about your story meeting Jim and Jimmy as well. But so I was on the original rules making committee for LS Fest, and at that time, Holly did not have a lot of LS stuff, and they decided, hey, we are going to go ahead and get into this. I was working with Bill Titchener. It was one of the greatest honors of my life to work with these people putting together that initial event. And I remember them talking about what they had envisioned, and they said, well, we have a promoter in mind. We don't know if we can get him, but if we can, it's going to be really awesome. I'm like, well, who is it, Bill? He said, I can't quite tell you that yet. And it turns out it's Jimmy Day. And it's like, no kidding. And I'd never seen an event like that. And you said something earlier that I found really special about this thing. It's something where LS Fest it brings in drag racers, it brings in autocrossers, it brought in car show people. It was a little mix of everything. And then your event, you know, was really a little bit more edgy yet as it developed. You know, you got into doing the track days, and then, you know, the track part of it. You know, you had the cruise part of it to kind of qualify the cars as being street cars. And then, you know, we also had the drift people out there. And really that event, even to this day, I was here this last summer, and it's just a phenomenal event. And can you tell us a little bit about what it was like to speak with Holly that first time and to, you know, get the vision of what Holly S would be and how, you know, you guys would work together for the next years?
Yeah, that's a fun story to tell, because it happened, that whole thing came together at the PRI show. And my partner and I had worked on a festival type event. We had an idea for an event that we wanted to do that was a festival type event. We didn't call it a festival event at the time, but it was kind of expanding on the multi-segment event, and we wanted to do something that was a little less competitive and we could get more people in. And it's always been our goal to try and bring different segments of the car market together, because they all buy aftermarket parts, but they all have their own kind of little niche. But we thought if we could figure out a way to get them all together, it could really be exciting. So we put an idea together into a deck and actually presented it to another national company. and said, we think this is a great idea, and we think this is a great way to market, and we feel like this would be great for your brand. And after sitting down and presenting that to them, they just decided, you know what, that's not for us. I'm not sure this is going to work. I'm not sure everybody's ready to bring all these different car people together and do all of this thing. It sounds very daunting to find a facility and that kind of stuff. So we're like, okay. And I believe that was at the SEMA show. And a month later at PRI, we scheduled a lunch meeting with Bill, because I've been, before I was doing event promotion, I had a build business called Imagine Motorsports, and Holly was one of my sponsors in building cars. And in fact, that's why I met Jim McIlvaine, is when I owned Imagine Motorsports. I built a Dodge Dart Swinger with a 528 Hemi in it, which was kind of the first pro touring Dart that was out there. And Jim was the photographer of that. And I think, Jim, that's probably the first time you and I met in person.
No.
I'll never. No,
we built that Charger that you had on Power Tour
that's right. We built the RTE, which was an E-body sized B-body Charger. Yeah. I'll never forget Jim McIlvaine trying to squeeze his 7-foot self into the back seat of one of those cars to take pictures of the interior. Yeah, it was pretty neat. But anyway, I digress. I forgot where I was going with this whole thing. But when I was, doing Imagine Motorsports, where was I going? Oh, I was talking about, Holly was a sponsor of mine. So I had set up a lunch meeting with Bill at PRI, because I knew Bill at the time, not very well, but I knew Bill because I'd talked to him on the phone a couple times. And as you do at any, expo type event, you try and get with all your sponsors and all your clients and just talk with them a little bit. And it was over lunch that Bill had mentioned that, hey, we're considering getting into this LS market, and we want to put an event together that kind of celebrates the LS. And my business partner and I said, hey, we've got an idea. And so we said, can we get together later for dinner? Literally went back to the hotel, changed up our presentation a little bit, showed it to Bill. And that, what we shared in that presentation and what LS Fest now is two completely different things. But that was the seed of the idea that kind of evolved then into what LS Fest is today. And I feel so lucky to be able to have the opportunity to partner with companies like Optima and Holly to do events like these, because both of these organizations understand passion. They understand individuals that are passionate about what we do. They're not just corporate aftermarket companies. The people that work at these organizations, like Jim, like Cam, and like Bill, they're automotive enthusiasts, just like you guys are, and just like I am. And they understand that the end goal is for that participant to have a great time, and that's what's going to resonate the most. And again, I said it earlier, but when you integrate your brand into what passionate and enthusiasts like to do, they're a really, really loyal bunch of people, and they will buy your parts. And we've seen so much success with that formula.
That's awesome.
So Mac, I wanted to ask you, with Optima and the involvement in this series as well as other events and things, where does Optima see it going? When you look ahead, say 3 to 5 years, what do you think is going to change? What's going to be different? And I also wanted to ask you, I believe Jimmy hit the nail on the head with exactly why Optima is involved in this, because you want to get exposure for your brand. It's people that are enthusiasts that are using the product, and it just resonates with a ton of people in the market. But could you talk to us about that and where you see this going in a few years?
Well, as we were down in Circuit of the Americas last weekend for the Invitational, I commented to somebody about how when the Ultimate Street Car Invitationals first started, and we had people like Mark Stilo and Mary Posey and Brian Hobaugh, I kind of wondered, Brian Finch, what would happen if these people went away and never did this again? And I guess one of the answers would be we'd have a lot less Camaros, but
right.
that wasn't the answer, because we still have a bunch of Camaros, and those folks have kind of gotten into other stuff, and I can't say that we've replaced them, but there's other people there now. And I look at the people that are running with us now, and it's like, wow, Mike Dussold and C.V. Ramey and Jake Roselle, what would happen if those guys did something else? And they might. And our hope is that somebody else will come in. But what I see with all of those people, whether they run with us now or they've run with us in the past, is they're really the 1%ers. They're the people that do absolutely everything with their cars. You heard what Jimmy said he's done with his AMX, and it's several hundred people like that. They'll drive them all over the country. They'll race them on a road course. They'll take them to an autocross. They'll take them to a car show.
Yeah.
They'll drag race. They don't care. They just want to have fun with their cars. And for us, it's a great opportunity to capture some branded content, but mostly just incredible, iconic cars that everybody sees in features and magazines, doing what everybody wants to see them do, having fun on the racetrack, being pushed to their limits. And it's just great for the Optima brand to be associated with that. The series, it really started that first year when Jimmy and Cam had the idea to do it at SEMA. There was a couple dozen cars that went out to Spring Mountain Motorsports Ranch, and half of them didn't even finish. But everybody loved it, and it blew up from there. In 2014, they started a qualifying series, went around the country. We still go around the country, and all the events are televised on MAV TV. And it's just, I don't think anybody could have envisioned it would have grown like this. And some folks think you need to have a big checkbook, or you need to have a really expensive or really fast car. And I know we've got Andrew Scott watching in Louisville, Kentucky. He ran with us this year with a 93 Ford Probe that I don't think he spent $1,000 to acquire. And I don't know that he spent more than $2,000 or $3,000 to get it out on the track with us, but he's having a blast with it.
Yeah.
So it really is a series and an activity for people from all walks of life who just love cars and share that passion and want to have fun on some iconic racetracks and maybe get on TV or get in a magazine.
Yeah. Mac, I wanted to ask you, and you mentioned the event that just finished, which we were thrilled to be part of that. So Summit Racing this year had the display trailer out there. We partnered with Optima and Jimmy's organization. And, historically, we've always done everything we can to support racers in all different facets of the hobby. Our latest catalog on the inside front cover lists all the sanctioning bodies and groups we partner with. And I even mentioned to one of our catalog people, we're going to need to expand that box because we keep adding to this every year, which we love doing that. Your event was won by, and I don't want to say a lowly C4 Corvette because that sounds derogatory, and the guy won. The car's wicked fast, and he's a great driver. But I thought that was awesome because, like you said, sometimes everyone thinks, well, you got to get the latest, greatest, newest. I bought a C8, which I drive everywhere and I do track events with and stuff. You don't need a C8 to win the Optima event. C4, well modified, a lot of power, great driver, shows up and he took it and did a great job. Can you talk about that in the event and kind of the variety of cars, not just this year, but the last few years? Because I've always been fascinated, like Mike Dussault. Mike's a great customer of ours, good friend of ours. He went out and tore it up, won Optima. Danny Pop in the past has won it. And now this year a C4. And I think it's incredible, the variety of cars and the variety of people. And that's one of the things I love about the series. I think that is just awesome. Because as you said, Mac, a gentleman with a Ford Probe shows up and he isn't going to win the overall event. Well, maybe he could, but he shows up and has an absolute blast and has a great time doing it. And he gets a lot of track experience and a lot of time doing that for a minimal amount of money. And I think it's great the event can cater to people with such a broad range of cars, skills, abilities, etc. So can you tell us about all that variety and all the things that have happened over the last few years with the series?
We're in the same boat as Summit, I think. I guess automotive aftermarket companies can take different approaches to how they spend their marketing and advertising resources. And some will write a check to NASCAR or a NASCAR team and maybe have some hospitality tents and call it a year. But we really pursue the events where our customers are. And they're actually out there in their own cars doing their thing. And if it's off-roading, it might be King of the Hammers or Trail Hero. If it's car events, it might be LS Fest or Optima Ultimate Street Car. But I think one of the great things about that series is that Cam and Jimmy, as they crafted it and put together the series, they made it open and available, competitive and enjoyable to anybody with a production car. And we've had people come out and run with Teslas and Chevy Bolts and cars from the 1940s and 50s and pickup trucks when their cars broke, and it doesn't really matter. You know, we've got a way for folks to come out and have a great time and really just experience something that they can't get in that package anywhere else. And we try to make them feel special. We hire a photographer for every event. We obviously have the TV crew that puts together spots. In fact, there's a promo spot for the show that airs tonight. If people want to watch, it's on MAV TV, channel 214 on DirecTV, 1105 on AT&T Uverse at 8 p.m. Eastern and Pacific. And it's Austin Barnes and his dad. And it's a father-son thing for those guys. They raced late models and Lucas Series and saw this and decided to build a car for it. They ran a Viper for several years, and they ran a Corvette this year, and they go all over the country with it and have an absolute riot. And it pleases us to no end to be a part of that. And as we hopefully continue to come out with new products, it's kind of a plug and play for us, because if we have a new battery size, there's a good chance cars and trucks that are running that battery size will be running in our series, and it'll be a great way for us to promote that.
It's pretty awesome. Getting back to the pure breadth of the car ownership out there. I remember being out there in the horseshoe out in front of the hall out there at SEMA and seeing this really, really wide variety of cars come through. I'm like, what is going on here? And I'm bringing my C5Z over there, which is like, you know, it's just a Corvette, just like everybody else's Corvette. You know, it's nothing cool. And I'm seeing like, there's a Cobra, you know, coming through, rumbling past me. I'm like, oh, that's going to be the winner. And then I see something else coming through, and it's like, that's going to be the winner. And it was just amazing to see the different kind of cars there. And then you had people that were really trying to drive, you know, like you said, the probes out there, and he was just going to go out there and kick some butt. It was awesome to see that. The rule set, how did that original thing, I called this in a filming earlier this week with one of our other Powered by Enthusiasts things, but that 200 treadwear thing is like the great equalizer. And what it did is it made it so that a lot of people, regardless of the horsepower that they had, you know, you're on a production tire, a 200 treadwear tire, and it really helped a lesser powered car, maybe a lighter powered car, compared against something, you know, completely different with a ton of power that, you know, couldn't put the power down. How did that happen with 200 treadwear?
The 200 treadwear, I don't think we can take credit for kind of coming up with the 200 treadwear tire rule, but I know between myself and Cam and Jim and several other people in the industry, we didn't create these rules in a vacuum. We asked a lot of really smart people around the industry kind of when we were putting this thing together for input on this. But one of the things we knew was, we didn't want this thing to grow into cubic dollars and just come in and win. We started at the very beginning thinking about the longevity of the series and how to keep this series relevant for a long time. And one of the things that we know, and I think this is where our experience came into play, is that we've seen series come and go when if the rules aren't real well thought out and somebody comes in and just dominates the series, everyone else goes away. Nobody goes there for the opportunity to just get their butt handed to them, right? Everybody wants to feel like, as Jim has said a number of times, they want to feel like they have a puncher's chance to get into a decent finishing position. And that's not necessarily winning, but you certainly, for a lot of people, finishing solid mid-pack is a big accomplishment when you look at the field of cars that are put together for this. And so everybody wants to feel like they've got a chance. So we really started at the very beginning designing our rules to make sure that everybody that came there at least had a legit shot, if they tried hard, to be able to finish well. And so the 200 treadwear thing was kind of I guess it became the lowest common denominator of trying to equalize the field. It's like, okay, we want this to be all about street cars. So right away, we're going to take away all the comp tires, all the slicks, everything else that's out there. And what is a reasonable number? Well, at the time, there happened to be a lot of ultra high performance tires out there that were right around that 200 treadwear guideline. And so we decided that 200 treadwear was going to be that was going to be our baseline. Everything was going to go on that, and then we can design a rule set kind of around there. And it was not an easy thing to do, man. We got a lot of pushback on that, and we got a lot of people telling us that it was unsafe. A lot of people said it was overkill, and that people really needed to be able to run on stickier tires because they could really be competitive that way, and we were going to lose drivers because they couldn't be competitive, and so on and so forth. But we stuck to our guns. We had an advantage that a lot of series don't have, and that is we're not a club or a hierarchy. We get to make the rules, and there were times when we had to look each other squarely in the eye and say, you know what, these are going to be our rules, and certain people are not going to want to come out and play by this set of rules. And we had to learn to accept that, because we went in trying to get everybody. We wanted everybody to come out and have a good time. But the end result and the reality is that you can't please everybody. It took me longer than it should have to try and figure that out. And I ended up a lot of sleepless nights. I would take very personally the comments on Facebook and social media and just in the marketplace. I would take those very seriously and too seriously sometimes. And it hurts. This is our baby. We put it together, and nobody likes to hear that their baby's not perfect. Right. But that's kind of how it came about. And then the rule set today, as it has evolved, is just a series of corrections and adjustments that get us to where we are today. And I'm really proud of our rule set today, because we literally have cars in multiple classes that will finish 1 point away from each other for a national championship. It's happened the last 3 or 4 years in a row where single-digit points separated multiple classes from a national championship. So we feel like we've done a good job making adjustments to the rules to really try and give everybody that puncher's chance that Jim talked about real early on when we started putting these rules together.
It's awesome. And you're right, like the GTL. Can you go ahead and real quick, just for, the folks that, really haven't, going really all the way back to Real Street Eliminator. The first time that I saw those magazines, one car that does it all, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is cool. This is what kind of shaped me when I was 16 years old into what I wanted to have in terms of a car. And then your event and really even SCCA with Cam, I think that they recognized all the cool things that you guys are doing and, wanted to have a rule set around that. And Cam was created, and a lot of people in that are running your deal. But can you go through the separate classes, from the light to the vintage to the modern? Can you tell people a little bit about that?
Sure. So we actually have, it's 7 classes right now, Jim. We got 7 classes.
Six in
we have 6. Yeah, 6 classes, and then we have an outlaw class. So we have a GT class, which is a front engine, rear wheel drive, typically 2-door, 3,200 pound minimum weight. We're talking, Camaros, Mustangs, BMWs, that kind of vehicle fits in our GT class. We have a GTS class. The S stands for sports car, and these are our 2-seaters, like our modern Corvettes. Like the C5 and all-wheel drive cars like the GTRs and the Porsches. So all of those fit into our sports car class. Again, that is a 3,200 pound minimum weight class. We have our GTV class, which is our vintage class. Again, that tends to be front engine, rear wheel drive. We use 1989 as a cutoff, so everything 1989 and older fits in our vintage class. Again, 3,200 pound weight limit, and that is what we call our pro touring cars. That's we call that the eye candy of the series. It's those cars that people know and love, and that I've built and Jim has built, and many people that run our series run in the GTV class. It's one of our bigger classes. We have a GTE class, which is our electric car class. And again, it's a 3,200 pound minimum weight, but that is made for electric vehicles. And those are pure electric vehicles from the factory. We don't allow conversions. So this is for the Teslas and the Hyundai Ioniq and things like that run in that GTE class. Angela Barnhouse runs a Jaguar, the SUV, and Karen Thomas actually did very well in a Tesla, one of the SUVs that they run there as well. We have a GTL class, which is our lights class. And Holly, by the way, is a sponsor of our GTL class. That's where the cars that don't fit, they're built for a class, but then they tend to be lightweight cars. So we have some early C5s that run in the GTL class. Those are for anything that's under 3,200 pounds, but those cars have to weigh 90% of their factory published curb weight. So we allowed people to do that to reduce the weight in their car, to pick up a little bit of speed in that, but we didn't want anything really stupid out there. We didn't want an 1,800 pound, 800 horsepower something, because that's, for what we do, that's just dangerous. And we know somebody would do that. Right. And so we added the 90% rule when we built that class. We added the 90% of factory curb weight to just try and keep things reasonable and keep a field that didn't have, unrealistic closing speeds on a road course or something like that. Right.
Yeah.
So I did the GT,
Compact
GTS,
class.
The compact class. We have our GTC class, and that is for, I'm just going to call it the Miata drivers. There's a lot of cars that fit in that class, but it's a short wheelbase, tends to be 4-cylinder engines. We do allow some 6s, but it tends to be the 4-cylinder cars, like the Miatas, like the S2000s.
Oh, yeah.
We've had a couple of other vehicles that run in there. I think, and that class we put out there because there's this huge segment out there of vehicles that run in other series, and we didn't really have a place for that when we first built our series. So we created the compact class for those folks. And then what else am I missing, Jim?
That's it.
That's it. And then we 2 years ago, we created the Outlaw class.
Mm-hmm.
And the Outlaw class was really created to kind of open the door for some of the folks that were running a little bit bigger aero. They still had street cars, but they were running a little bit bigger aero, maybe running some of the other series. And they really liked what we were doing and wanted to be part of our series. So we created a class to try and bring some of those guys over and let them enjoy what we're doing and see how we're doing it and see what we're doing, to see if some of it rubs off on them and they might want to stick around.
I think that's pretty cool because as enthusiasts, we never want to just build something and leave it alone. We want to kind of progress. We call it the pathway to performance here at Summit Racing. And it's like, okay, your car is stock. And then what do you do? Well, cold air intake and exhaust and headers and all that stuff. And then it's a top end, maybe it's a supercharger. And then it just, progresses, bigger brakes, better suspension. And what I really liked about your series is it doesn't really hold me back. I mean, I like rules as much as the next guy, but I always want to have a place to go. And I'm also not worried, like if I have an S2000 or something like that, I don't mind competing against a tube frame car, not directly in class, but, it gives me a place to go where I can, hold my head up. So I think you guys have done probably the best job of that out of anybody, really.
Well, thanks for that. And I Jim has spent countless hours. Mac he's kind of our data analyst in addition to a lot of other things, but he's spent countless hours analyzing the data over the years of different vehicles, their lap times, how they perform in class, how those classes perform against other classes in the series. And it's really been helpful to be able to use that data as people call us and say, well, you must do this. And it's like, well, no, we really don't have to, because look at this. We all have a tendency to want to be, we're all competitive, right? And we all want to go in there with the opportunity to win. And typically what that leads to is somebody calling me saying, you need to have a class for my car. And it's like, well, we have a class for your car. It's already there. Yeah. And it's like, well, that's not fair because my car does fit in that class, but I can't win. Well, I'm boiling this down to its simplest, right? To make it sound a little bit ridiculous, but that's kind of what it boils down to is like, yes, right. We have a class for your car. And yes, maybe the car you choose to drive is not the fastest car in that class, but there is certainly a class right. for you to participate. We don't build classes for people to come out and win the class. We build classes to gather the most amount of cars that we can to make the door wide open for the biggest variety of vehicles that we can for the series and for the participants. And we pride ourselves on the size of our rule book. It's really small. We have an unwritten rule internally that if we add a rule, we have to take one out because we do not want to increase the size of our rule set. And we've been very open and honest with people that call us about rules, and they've, I don't know, I get a lot of calls and people say, well, what if I do this? And I'm not ashamed to tell them, don't do that. Because if you do that, not only am I going to name a rule after you, but it doesn't help the series. It doesn't help the series. It doesn't help the sponsors when you start playing. And I expect competitive people to play in the light gray areas of the rules, right? And rules are never black and white. You try to be as much as you can. But in the racing world, in the competitive world, there's always this area of gray. And I'm okay with people playing in the light gray areas. That's what competitive people do. You have to stretch the limits of the rules. But when people start playing towards the dark gray areas of the rules, I get a little more uptight. And we've been very honest with people to say, just don't do that. Because if you do that, and if you build something like that, and you bring it to a single event and you absolutely dominate the event, great, here's a trophy, don't come back. Right. And the health and the longevity of the series outweighs any one single participant or one single car. And we've been relentless on that. And we just don't back away from that. It's important.
I love the fact that you called the very first one an invitational. You know, it's like earning your way there is one thing. And a lot of people be like, I earned my way into this. It's like, no, you're being chosen, you know, because you are representative of a group of people. You know, you're not automatically in this thing just because you've got a car. And I really like that. You know, you guys are picking cars up off the floor out there at SEMA that did not have 200 treadwear tires. And you're like, you want in? And they're like, yeah. And it's like, oh, now I need tires. And I saw people out there doing wheel and tire swaps overnight so they could come out to the track.
And by the way, we're glad to ship those to them. So if anybody happens to need them, we stock a lot of tires.
Right.
Maybe you guys should just bring some in popular sizes.
I was going to say, yeah, you could bring some out there and sell them right off the truck next year. That'd be great.
Yeah.
It's still called the Invitational, and we do that on purpose because, as you said, Brian, the people that are coming out there, and many of them have worked really hard and spent a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of effort and energy to get to that final event. But we still call it the Invitational because we still invite, we still have golden ticket winners that come right off of the showroom floor. This year, our golden ticket winners, we chose from different builds around the country and different people that we knew were coming to SEMA but didn't have the chance. So we still issued golden tickets this year to get people out. And the golden ticket cars are not just fast, high horsepower cars. They're cars that are significant within our industry, and that we want to have them at the Invitational because they showcase one thing or another that's important to our industry and that's interesting to the media, and people want to cover that stuff. So we still call it the Invitational, and we don't have any plans to change that.
And it is an invitational. Even if people get in on points, the reality is we've elected to extend invitations to people based on their performance during the regular season. So
right,
it's not an open event. You can't plunk down a certain amount of money and just get into the event. You have to find a way to get an invitation to it, whether you earn it at the qualifying series or you blow Jimmy and Cam away with your appearance and presence at the SEMA show.
Right.
Well, and a perfect example of that this year in particular, we had a company that offered to sponsor our event. They offered to come into our event at the High Performance Expo and be a significant level sponsor just for the opportunity to drive in the Invitational. And I turned them down. I said, thank you very much for your interest. We always appreciate people that want to come out and be part of this, but you can't buy your way into the Invitational. If you want to be part of the event, absolutely, we'll let you sponsor the event, but we're not going to give you a spot in the Invitational just so you can come in and beat up on the drivers that have worked really hard all year long to get to where they are. So people have tried it, and we stand our ground on that.
A lot of integrity.
At some point, we should mention the website is driveoptima.com, where you can go to learn more about the series and the rules and how you can get involved. And Nick North can figure out that his Marauder would be in the GT class because it's over 3,200 pounds,
well.
built after 1990 and weighs, 4,000 pounds. And Travis Spitzer, depending on the year of his F body, would be either in the vintage class or the GTV or the GT class because it's a 4-seat coupe, 2-wheel drive, 3,200 pounds, that type of thing. But all the information's over there, and it's it's interesting to see what people show up with, because we have that compact class, and that's where the Ford Probe runs. But we had a golden ticket invitation, Bob Boileau's 66 Datsun 520 pickup truck. Well, that's a short wheelbase pickup truck with a Miata engine swap in it. And in theory, it's light enough to be in the GTL class. It's old enough to be in the vintage class, but it's not really going to be competitive in either one of those classes. So we put that in the compact class, and we let some of those older vintage Porsches run in that class, and some of the older vintage Lotuses will run there as well. And it's taken some time to kind of refine the way we split everybody up, but it's the way it's formatted. Everybody can go out and be competitive within their class, but also have that yardstick of how am I stacking up against the very best cars that are out there.
Yeah. Jim and Jimmy, while we've got you here, the one thing I did want to ask you about, and this has been a big topic this year on a lot of forums, especially like in the CAM forum. I know at UMI's event, there was a lot of talk about this, and I'm sure within the Optima events, there's talk about it. Tire rules. So within the 200 tread wear tire, there's a couple of tires that the guys who have them and run them love them, but the guys who don't have them and don't run them hate them, and they want them outlawed. And one example of that, and not to pick on this tire, but the Kumho ACR. So awesome tire, phenomenal performance, but a lot of folks in different forums that I frequent and at some of the events I've been at, they feel that it's unfair that tire's allowed in. Should be banned. It's not available in all sizes.
2 sizes.
Yeah, it's available in 2 sizes. Yep. I got to build a whole car around it. I could go on and on and on. I'm sure you guys have heard a lot of this. What are both of your thoughts on rules specifically to one type of tire like that? Is it the type of thing that you say, we don't want to get in the middle of this? Is it the type of thing where you say, no, it makes sense. It's not a product you could run on every car in that class. What are your guys' views on that? Because I think it's a real interesting topic.
It's a very interesting topic and a very controversial topic. And depending on who you're talking to, people are really passionate about that topic, as racers can be at times.
Really?
So just to be clear, the Ultimate Street Car Association and the Optima Search for the Ultimate Street Car does not allow the Kumho ACR 720. That tire is specifically not legal in our rules, and right now that's the only tire of 200 that's rated 200 tread wear that's not.
What about the federal
in the series? The federal, I believe we changed the rules this year to allow the federal as well, didn't we? Maybe I'm wrong.
I'd have to go back and look, but the basis for doing that is it's not just that it's a lack of availability for certain vehicles, but also, we're cognizant of the expense involved in doing this stuff. And if these tires have a compound that's technically softer than what a lot of other 200 tread wear tires are, we don't want to turn it into a contest to see who can buy the most tires to be competitive.
Right. And I agree. The Kumho ACR 720 is only available in 2 sizes. So it's one of those tires that, does it have a competitive advantage? It seems to. If you look at the data and you look at the times, that seems to be a tire that can give a driver an advantage. And so we've made the decision in Ultimate Street Car to not allow that tire to then keep the field that's fighting for a big national championship on a little bit more of a level playing field with tires that are more readily available to folks, because we, as I mentioned earlier, we made a determination that we didn't want this series to be run by cubic dollars. We wanted it to be open to just about everybody. That being said, I'm in a very uncomfortable position, I'll tell you, because I have one foot on each side of the fence. And if you can picture that puts you in a very uncomfortable position, right? There are people who have gone out of their way to be competitive, and we don't choose the platform that you drive in our series, or for that matter of fact, any event we run. You get to choose the car that you drive and the platform that you drive and how you build it. And so if you choose to drive a car that the ACR tire doesn't fit that's still your choice. I didn't make that choice for you. You made that choice. And people out there have made the choice that they want to run a car that tire will fit, because there are certain events that they want to run that tire is beneficial. So they didn't put themselves in a box. Yes, Andrew Scott and his probe, he can't run the ACR on his probe. It doesn't fit. I get that. But, and sorry to pick on you, Andrew, but you chose to drive that car. We didn't choose that for you. It's, I have likened it to, if I outlaw a certain tire, should I outlaw a certain blower? Should I outlaw a certain set of headers? Should I outlaw any other aftermarket part that is either in big supply or not big supply? Who am I to tell people what they can and can't run on a vehicle of their choice? That's kind of how I look at it. So there are certain events that still allow that tire. Going forward, it's always going to have to be considered and looked at. And I don't know that tire is going away anytime soon. I do know that it's, the production numbers on that tire are small, and it's something that we always take into consideration, because we always want to do what's best for the industry. This is not about us. It's really not. And I know sometimes people think it is, and I wish they wouldn't, because there's nothing that's in our interest to limit the number of people coming to our events or to make people mad. If we do that, people aren't going to show up, and that's not good for the series. And so we don't ever go that direction. But it's something that we're going to continue to look at on an event by event basis. And I know everybody looks at Jim and I, and they think we make the rules ourselves, just the two of us. Sometimes that decision goes farther up the food chain than where we are. And certain people that own events that we don't own, sometimes have a different say so and a different opinion about that, and that trickles down into the rules.
So Kurt Binkley, brings up a great point. It's not spec racing, and frankly, spec racing for a spectator is boring. This is a celebration of something where everybody, you can run what you bring your car, go out there and run. And to Nick North's point, he's wondering, like, I've never autocrossed before. He might be a drag racer, who knows what. But what I really appreciate about your series is it's allowed a lot of us, really stepping stones. A lot of us may have gone to the drag strip for the first time, and we've never autocrossed. And then, maybe a lot of us have autocrossed, but we've never been out on a big track. And so a lot of ways you've allowed a lot of people to kind of get their toes wet in a lot of different forms of racing that they never would have done before. One of the things I appreciated was going out there on the big track. If I made a big mistake, hopefully not a big mistake like going off or something, but it was forgiven. They knew that we've got different levels of driver out there, and we're not all going to be the greatest, but it's really cool. So I would encourage people to look into this type of racing, because just get your feet wet with it. You're going to progress. It's a pathway to performance. What you're doing now, don't think you have to be as great as you're going to be in 10 years. 2021 is a step, 2022 is a step. And like Al does, with Old Red, he does one or two things to the car every year to make it a little bit more competitive and a little faster. And that's why we're all enthusiasts. That's a big part of it. And you guys have, really given a lot of people like this, bucket list opportunity to do these type of things.
Yeah, one of the things I wanted to mention too, while we're talking about how to get into some of these events and eventually how to progress, get better, faster, modify your car to make it better and faster and all that, I just want to mention this real quickly. This is a really neat product called the Garmin Catalyst that we started carrying this year. And I think it really hits the nail right on the head for people that might come out and run an Optima event, but they've not done it before, but they want to get better. A lot of instructors I've talked to are leaning away from right-hand side seat instruction. And Jim and Jimmy, I'm not sure at your events if you even allow that. You probably don't, because a lot of events don't. But they really shy away from it. The Garmin Catalyst records video data. It also records on-track data, GPS-based. It's got over 1,000 tracks in it. This device can help somebody who's a novice learn, get better, and understand things better. And it gives you a ton of data. So if anybody watching has an interest, they're kind of a novice, our YouTube channel's got a great overview video on this. Subscribe, go to YouTube, Summit Racing's channel, subscribe, check this video out. Pretty neat product though. And I think for a lot of people, something like this could help them. Because again, right-hand side instruction, there's still some people out there that do it, but I've talked to a number of people, and they're starting to shy away from that a little bit just because of some of the risks.
The cars can be
inherent.
Insanely fast. It's
and you never know when somebody's going to run out of talent.
Yeah.
So being in the right seat when that happens is just really, really unnerving, and it can be, very frank, it can be quite unsafe. So I think it's really, really important that people have a tool like that. And I commend Garmin quite a bit for coming out with it, because I think the timing is really good with everything and the advancements and the developments that are going on in motorsports. So I just want to mention that with this audience. I thought it was a relevant product that we should just mention and at least make people aware of.
Safety, safety, safety. One of the things that Jimmy, told the group when I was out there that first year, he said, I will never, ever dock you for having safety stuff in your car, and to a lot of people, it's extra weight, it's whatever. But I really appreciated that stuff. You're really looking out for the drivers, some of which are, maybe a little in over our heads, at times, and we progress and get better, but, cages, seats, harnesses, Hans device, all that stuff to keep a driver safe. I really appreciated that you said that's okay. As much of that as you need, that's, the primary goal here.
We're really proud of our safety record with Ultimate Street Car Association, the Optima events, LS Fest, and all the other events that we do. It's the top of our list when we put things together. We build everything from there down. So safety is first and foremost and primary. And I'm glad you brought that up because, and Al, as you mentioned, there's less and less right seat instructors out there these days. It's harder and harder to find them. And so products like what you just showed really help. But one of the things that we've done with our series is we offer a novice class on our road course. And we don't group drivers by their car class. We group drivers on the road course by their experience level. So we have expert, intermediate, and novice. So when it really creates quite a wide variety of cars on track at a time. It's really fun to watch because you can have an expert in a Miata, you can have an expert in a C8 Corvette, you can have an expert in a 69 Mustang, and having all of those cars out on track at the same time really creates a really cool visual. But at the same time, when we have a novice class, and novice class is for our more beginning drivers, and we have different passing rules for the novices to try and keep them safe. We do a lot of things to help them get better. We try and simplify it for our novice class. We have a separate novice drivers meeting when we're done, because a drivers meeting for a novice can be intimidating. There's a lot of information that takes place in a novice or in a drivers meeting, for all the way from flags to passing rules to logistics on how you get to the track and what the schedule is going to be. And as a novice, you're nervous as a long-tailed cat in a room full of rockers when you are at that meeting, and you're only going to remember a few things from that meeting. So what we do is, after the drivers meeting, we take the novices aside and say, here are the top 5 things that you need to think about today, and you're going to have a great time. The other thing we allow in our series, and I'm sure there's some other series that do this too, but we allow drivers to ride right seat with other drivers if they choose to do so. That way they can help and coach and get people on track, get them driving a proper line, and help them understand braking points and apexes and turn in and turn out, help them understand that a little quicker than if they're trying to learn on their own. A, they're safer, and B, they're going to have more fun when they do that. Again, we're really proud of our.
And it's not always the slower driver that's in the driver's seat. Sometimes we have experienced drivers that'll allow novices to ride the passenger seat, so they can understand from that perspective what the lines are and the apex points on the track and things like that. So it can go both ways.
What was that, Brian?
And what their cars are capable of too. You could put Danny Pop or somebody in somebody's car and pick up 4 seconds. It's like, holy cow. It's amazing to see what a good driver can do really in a lot of different cars.
Yeah, and one other thing to mention too, because out of my own personal experience having done this, showing up at a track and not having looked at a track map and not understanding the track, the best thing before, my advice to anybody who's a novice who wants to, I want to go to Mid-Ohio and do a track day, or I want to go to, pit race or whatever your local track is, and you want to go do it, go watch some in-car video before you ever set foot on that racetrack.
Absolutely.
Because you've got to understand going around it. And even if you're going to go and you're a novice and you say, I just want to go to an event and do a ride along with somebody to understand it better. And Jimmy, to your point, you find somebody nice enough to let you do that. Still watch some video because you want to know where you're going in that track, even if you're in the passenger seat, to be able to brace yourself and know what's coming up. I have seen people show up at events having no idea where they're going, and they're screaming like they're riding a roller coaster all the way around. And it's probably a good idea to know what to expect before you jump in and do that. So I appreciate the vintage class and what you guys do, Jimmy, because I think that's a great way for us to get people into the sport, enjoy it, make their car faster, progressively over the years pick up, and just stay with it, rather than showing up in other things that maybe they have to compete with people at an incredibly high level, and they get frustrated and they want to come back and do it again. So I think that's fantastic. Also, we talked a little bit about safety equipment. Again, another shameless plug. Brian and I have made sure that at Summit, our safety equipment assortment is tremendous. Helmets, hand devices, racing suits, shoes, Nomex underwear, all the things that you need. And Jimmy, to your point about safety, I'm shocked at some of the track events that I've been to, and it's gotten better over the last few years, but I can think back 5-6 years ago, going to an event at Pit Race and people running in T-shirts. Mm-hmm. And, you don't know when something bad is going to happen, nor do people realize how quickly something can go from being great to being not so great, and how long it takes you to get out of the car and how many other things can happen. So I think for any of our customers or friends that are watching, you've spent a lot of money on your car. You've probably spent countless thousands of dollars. Go spend the money on good safety equipment. Buy a good helmet. Buy a driving suit. Buy a Hans device if you're really getting serious about it. You really, really need to be as safe as possible when you're out doing these things. And I would say that holds true, not necessarily a driving suit and all that, but even for autocrosses, you want to have good harnesses if you can put harnesses in the car. You want to be stationary as possible. You want to have a good helmet. You got to be safe because we love our customers and we want you doing this for a long, long time.
In-car cameras, we were talking with some of our racers about, the value of having an in-car camera, because Al and I have co-driven, on cars before, and we don't realize how much we're being thrown around the car, or when we make a mistake, as much as going ahead and, watching a lap or two, even between runs, watching yourself, being thrown about the car is one thing, but also you can see when you made a mistake, you brake too early, you got on the gas. A lot of that is just, maybe introspection, but the camera allows you to do it. GoPros are cheap. We've got all that stuff too. So there are tools you can use, and you don't have to. You'd be surprised that even some of the best drivers in Optima, they don't have telemetry and data logging. Some of them do, but there's a lot of fast people that don't, and are just naturally good drivers, naturally good at setting up a car. So don't go in there with this idea that you need all this stuff. Dip your feet in. Let's go. Andrew Scott brings up another thing, which is this is interesting with COVID here in 2020. So Andrew Scott says, hey, I was out there and it was within basically a spec Miata, and he said I was within a second of my sim time. So he's out there in a driving simulator. Summit Racing, we just basically brought on racing simulators this year, is something where if we can't be out at the track, at least we can be sitting there, with some munchies, going around our tracks and stuff. It's not real racing, but here in 2020 with COVID, it's something that we can kind of use to, keep our game up, and it's just going to make us a little bit faster in the future. So sim racing is a thing. And so there's a lot of things that we can do just to kind of get ready for 2021 when the nation, recovers from this.
Yep. And we're very proud of our safety. I tell people in drivers meetings, and I don't try and scare people, but I do want to scare them just a little bit when we do our drivers meetings, is that a car burns just as hot on the autocross as it does on the road course, right? Think about that for a minute, because we get a lot of people that are like, oh, it's just autocross. All I need is my helmet. It's like okay, yes, and we're gonna, that's a great safety device, and yes, you're going to be belted in and all of that kind of stuff. But what happens when that car catches on fire? It literally burns at the same temperature. And so I recommend that people wear all their safety gear all the time, regardless of whether it's an autocross or a road course or everything else. And I remind them that in pictures, you look cooler wearing a race suit than you do just wearing a regular T-shirt.
Yeah,
it's your brand,
Jimmy,
man.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. You're absolutely right on that. That no matter where you have an accident at, you still have the same distress, the same things. You got to get out of the car, and that's an excellent point. I'm very, very glad you mentioned that, because we want to keep people safe no matter which way you're going. You also mentioned autocross. Can you talk a little bit about the autocross events that you've put together and the things that you see in 2021 and how that's going to unfold, assuming that we can have events as normal in all the locations and all those type of things? But could you talk about the autocross component of what you do as well?
Sure. We do a lot of autocross events, and I'm proud to say that Eric Heller is our autocross and speed stop segment coordinator for all of the autocross events that we do. It's unfortunate that Eric couldn't be here with us today, because he's a great guy and well respected in the industry. But we do autocrosses for Ultimate Street Car. That's one of the segments that we do for Ultimate Street Car. We have a series of autocross events called Drive AutoX. Autocross is included in all of our festival events, which would be LS Fest East and West, Ford Fest, and Mo Party. All of them have, and we just did our first Optima World Championship Autocross. All of them have a little bit of a different personality. And one of the things that we're really trying to do is elevate the sport of autocross. Autocross has been around, since cars and parking lots, I believe. It's been doing it for a long time. And another sanctioning body, it has been doing them organizing them since really the early 70s or something like that. There've been organized competitions with autocross, and it's one of those things that literally hundreds of thousands of people have done, but it's really gone in our estimation kind of unrecognized. There's huge talent in the autocross industry. There's drivers out there that, if they had the opportunity, and we're starting to see this now, if they had the opportunity to do this as a semi-professional or professional sport, they probably could do pretty well at it. I know one of somebody who's become pretty famous at it lately is Jeremy Swenson. He's actually he's been watching here, and I saw him put up a Clark Kent comment earlier. Jeremy, thanks very much. Not many people can see me with my glasses on, but when I'm in my office, I do. But so we're really trying hard to elevate the sport of autocross, make it available to as many people as we can make it, open it up to as many people as we can. It's something that really anybody with any kind of skill level at all can come out and do it. It's not nearly as hard on your car as road racing. You can run an entire season on a set of tires and a set of brake pads if you're careful. But even if you do, the maintenance items are easy when you're doing autocross. You're talking brake pads and potentially tires, and you may want to upgrade the shocks, things like that. But you don't have to do that stuff. You can come out and run a local autocross on a weekend. You drive your car there, drive the autocross, and drive home, and have a lot of fun. Figure out your driving skills, figure out your car, those kind of things. And we want people to do that. We really do. We feel like autocross is such a broad spectrum because it can be an entry level activity for somebody that's just getting a car or a performance car or learning driving skills. And it can be an ultra highly competitive, huge purse paying activity for people with cars that are just over the top. So it's a very broad spectrum when it comes to autocross. And we want to focus on that because we feel like that autocross that door is open probably for a much larger group of people than those that are willing to get out onto a road course. So we've focused our efforts on these different autocross series, again, to allow people with different skill levels to have a comfortable opportunity to come out and run these events in a manner that makes them feel good and competitive.
You said something there about, widening the group of people that can enjoy this. I think back to 16-year-olds. You can be 16 with a valid driver's license and you can go out there and do autocross. And I think back to some of my 16, 17 years old, not doing what I'm doing at all. In my car, I drive to high school. And at the time we had people that were taking pro street cars and converting them back to pro touring. They're just looking for the next thing to do. And they're like, it's built to go around corners. It's doing pretty good. People that, maybe in my case, 48, but people that may be 55, 60 years old that have never done autocross, that you can do it. And you know what? It only takes a few times to kind of get the hang of it. It's something that it can be addicting.
I think the great thing too, Jimmy, and I would ask any of our customers and any participants of any of your events, if you have somebody ask to go for a ride, excuse me, take them for a ride. I have not had anybody, and I've taken, hundreds of people for rides between Good Guys events, local SCCA stuff over the years, because I've enjoyed autocross with Eric Heller and the Akron group for a long time. And shout out to Akron Sports Car Club, my home club, great group of people, and they've always been very welcoming to newbies. But if you're at an event and somebody asks for a ride, I have never taken somebody for a ride and had them get out of the car, not just blithering saying, I got to do that. How do I do that? How do I start? They get out of the car and it's like, oh my goodness, I got to figure out how to do that. And that's honestly what happened to me back in 1996 when I had a neighbor who moved in, who we met having beers over a campfire one night. And the next day I'm going to the Akron Sports Car Club's autocross with him. I went for a ride and I said, that's unbelievable. And autocross to me is the type of sport, if you watch it rather than be immersed in it, you can't go to a parking lot and watch it and really understand it. If you go for a ride, it is unbelievable. And this friend of mine, Rick Gilbert, was nice enough to say, after my first ride, hey, you want to co-drive with me? And I said, sure. And I co-drive that day, and that set the hook. And that was it. And it is so enjoyable and so fun. So if you ever have the opportunity, you want to make somebody's day, take them for a ride. Because, again, I think that's such a great way to get people into it.
And the American Experimental Aircraft Association has a Young Eagles program where pilots actually are encouraged to take kids up and get them hooked on flying. And I'll hand over this free steal of an idea from those guys to Summit. You guys should come up with a program like that where you encourage folks to take people for rides in their cars, because it's, we're growing up with an era and a generation of kids that are content to look at their devices while their parents drive them around. And we need to get more people that are get the hooks sunk in them and want to get behind the wheel and really enjoy cars.
Yeah, Jim, we'll talk more outside of this call with you guys about how to do that, because Bill Howell and I had that conversation years ago about how do you get people a ride. And he did a program with BFG, the Share the Ride program, where they have Mustangs and things. And credit to Bill for doing that, because I'm sure he's gotten a lot of people really interested in the sport as a result of that. So, I think you're right. I think we got to figure out, let's get some buses and bus a bunch of high school kids out to an event and have them go out for a ride. Because I do think, and I'll speak on behalf of my own son. I've taken everybody in my family for a ride in autocross, my wife, my kids, and all of them said, oh my gosh, that's like the greatest roller coaster ever. I mean, that's exactly, they get out of the car.
60 seconds.
Yeah, they think it is so much fun. And I love sharing that with them. I think that is just a neat thing to be able to go out and do that. So, Jim, you're great point. And I think we got to give that more thought on how do we do more of that, because that's I think all of our goal is get more and more people to enjoy this and more people getting out, having fun with their cars. It's the greatest thing. I love seeing our customers enjoy their cars.
We talked a little bit about 2021 and kind of, basically the reset for 2020. I guess really both of you, where do you see this thing going? I mean, obviously we've talked a little bit about EVs. A lot of the EVs, I got to tell you, it's so cool to see a Tesla out there. And a lot of our customers, being traditional internal combustion people, it's like, whatever, they're not really into it. And I said this in a thing earlier this week. Elon, when he basically said, no, we're not going to go all Prius-y with the Model S. We are going to go after low 11-second, quarter miles with this thing and just blow people's socks off with the thing. I thought it was brilliant. I don't want to get into green or what have you, these cars are fast, low center of gravity, instant torque, the traction control, stability, whatever you call it, are phenomenal. So we see EV coming on. You've got a class for it, which I think is great. It's very forward thinking. Some people have tried to outlaw EV for safety reasons, like you can't put out a battery fire. That's, can I use the word BS? Because
sure,
that's BS. These cars they're safe, and frankly, it's a bunch of people with internal combustion engines that are just a little bit jealous that they're getting waxed by a family car. So, like you said, earlier, it's like, we didn't pick your platform, guy. You have to decide if you want to win that bad. Go do what you have to do, and have a car in this class, have a car in that class. It's up to you. But I really appreciate what you guys have done. You're thinking about the future. Where else do you see things going?
Well, one of the things that we've, and this is something that Jim and I do all year long, and especially now this time of the year after the last event, is we take a long, hard look at the rule set that we have and what needs to be changed. We think back throughout the year, and we go back to our notes, and we say, okay, what happened this year that we didn't like, that a rules change could take care of? What do we need to be looking at? What should we do to grow the series? What can we do to make the event more fun for the participants? One of the things that I think makes all of our events unique is that every single one of the events we do is geared around the participants. The participants themselves are the show. And without the participants, we don't have a show. If you put a great event together and the participants are having fun, that is infectious, and the spectators will come watch that. They see the drivers having fun. They see that, and it just builds on itself. So the key is making sure the participants are having a great time. So we look at what can we do with format changes, scheduling changes, location changes to make these events even more fun and more interactive for the participants. So. And then we also look at the marketplace itself. It's like this everything we do really is to help the automotive aftermarket industry. We do it because it's fun and we love it, but at the end of the day, let's just call a spade a spade. We're all in the aftermarket industry, and we need this industry. We want this industry to be healthy. So we do these for a lot of different reasons, and we do it for branding. We do it to sell products. We do it because we're passionate about it. But at the end of the day, when you put a driver in a car, three things are going to happen. That driver is going to want to be more competitive. They're going to drive their car, and they're going to break things, and they're going to need to buy parts to replace it. So everything that we do that puts a driver in a seat helps the automotive aftermarket industry, not just in our events, but in any events. When you put a driver in the seat of their car, it's good for all of us, whether we're associated with that event or not, because ultimately those people are going to end up being our customers in one form or another. So we look at the industry as a whole as well and say, where is the industry going, and how can we help support that by the events and making changes to the events? So, we look at different classes, and should we have a different class now because of where the market's going? Should we eliminate a class because we've run a class for a while and now we've accomplished the goal with that class, and can we go a different direction? And we look at different tracks. We've added a new track to our schedule this year. We're going to Utah Motorsports Campus, which we've never been to before. So we're trying to reach a different group of people that maybe didn't have an opportunity to go where we were going. It's kind of a bucket list track. If you're in the Northwest, that's a really cool track. For those of you that don't know, that's the old Miller Motorsports Park near Salt Lake, and it's a absolutely beautiful facility. Ford Performance uses that facility for Mustang training and things like that. So many different things go into what we look at for the upcoming year. One of the things we're looking at now is adding additional events to our format that aren't just Ultimate Street Car, but we were very successful with the High Performance Expo, bringing in some drifting, bringing in the streetcar takeover roll racing teams. So different things like that. Where can we partner? Is there an opportunity to partner with different organizations to help bring more people out to the events to get more viewership on the TV program? How does it make it more interesting for the participants? So many things go into what we plan for the upcoming year.
Hey, Jimmy, we had Marshall Reinhardt ask a question about, will we see more of the World Championship autocrosses in 2021? And I don't know if it's too early to talk about that, or if you do have a plan for that.
The short answer is yes, you will. The World Championship Autocross is something that we've actually been working on. I'm actually, if you see me looking over here, I'm looking at my whiteboard because I have notes on a whiteboard that go all the way back to 2017 with World Championship Autocross. That's how long ago we started thinking about World Championship Autocross and elevating the sport of autocross and bringing more attention to it. We've been thinking about it for a long time. As you guys know, we originally were going to debut World Championship Autocross in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia last year. When we went there, and for a lot of different reasons that didn't end up working out the way we wanted it to. But our vision is to do World Championship Autocross not just here in the US, but at different places around the world. You guys know we do an Ultimate Street Car event in Australia. It's likely that we will attempt to do a World Championship Autocross event there. That's a huge market for all of us in Australia. And you know, the pandemic has probably pushed that back a little bit, but that's, you know, we're going to get a handle on this thing before long, and we're going to be back out doing things and back traveling again. And so that's a big part of what we're planning on. So Marshall, to answer your question, the answer is yes. Do we have it laid out in stone? No, at this point we don't.
Awesome. Sounds good. Well,
I will tell you, one of the things that we think about World Championship Autocross is and I'm gonna throw a number out there for you guys. When we had live stream going for our World Championship Autocross at the High Performance Expo, and the number of people watching that live stream was staggering. For me, as I figured we'd have a few people watching, but the number of people that we had watching the World Championship Autocross to me was staggering. And Al and Brian, we'll share those numbers with you a little bit later. I don't want to talk about them publicly, but
anybody can see them, Jimmy. It says over 100,000 right on the thing.
All right, so we had over 100,000 people watching World Championship Autocross.
All right.
And for a very first event, it was unbelievable, the number of people. So we have some traction there. We know it's a great thing. The thing about World Championship Autocross, though, is it's one of those things that I believe personally, and we're going to talk more about this, is it's something that if you do it too frequently, you're not going to draw the kind of audiences that you want to draw for something that's called World Championship anything, right? If you do it once a month, well, it starts to not have quite as much impact.
Diluted.
Whereas if it's a once or twice a year type thing, you're really going to have a lot of anticipation. You're going to give people a lot of time to prepare for it, and you're going to get or have an opportunity to get the best of the best fighting for something that is very, very valuable. And so that's my take on it. We're going to have a lot of chats about that, but our Drive Auto X series, though, is a series, and it's something where we're trying something new. I don't know if you guys have ever had the opportunity to actually be at an event, but we've come up with a format that we call the Optima Shootout that's a little bit different for autocross. Al, I know you mentioned earlier that watching an autocross is a bit challenging.
Well,
and
I was going to mention, I went to your event in Cincinnati, and Danny and I co-drove the C8 that I've got, and he ended up runner-upping at the very end of it with the car completely stocked, that he's autocrossed a couple of laps, you know. So I think overall he did great, but the finish and how you run that, please describe it. It's really cool. The coolest.
Well, the Optima, we basically run, you know, a day and a half of qualifying to get to a final bracket for each class. And then we have an 8-car final bracket. We have an elimination bracket, but the elimination bracket, we don't run in a standard autocross format. We actually, we connect the start and finish of the autocross and turn it into a loop. So you now have basically a circuit rather than a start and a finish. And we put 2 cars on course. The easiest way to explain it is if the autocross course were just a circle, you'd start one car at 12 and one car at 6, just like a clock. and each car races back to its starting position. And the first car back to its starting position is the winner. We turn off clocks and you have to run it clean.
Wow.
And that really gets in the head of real autocross, what we call real autocross drivers or traditional autocross drivers. It really gets in their head when you turn the clock off and have another car out there on course. It's still a very safe event. We're not doing fender to fender racing or anything like that. There's nowhere where the cars are within, crashing distance of each other. But it's exhilarating to watch. It's fun to watch because we set up that finish line so that spectators can actually just look across the line and see which car gets back there first. So it's fun to watch. It adds an element for spectators that we haven't had out there before with autocross, and it adds an element for the drivers that we haven't done before. And I can't tell you how many times I've seen the number 8 qualifier take out the number 1 qualifier simply because the number 8 qualifier got a hole shot, and the number 1 qualifier is like, oh my gosh, and ends up making a mistake. Yeah. So it is a huge amount of fun and something that's a little bit different that we've been doing with the Drive Auto X series as well.
Yeah, it's very, very cool. Well, Jim and Jimmy, thank you so much for joining us today. We know your time's valuable. We know you're incredibly busy. Brian, thanks for hosting with me today. And we've taken a lot of your guys' time. But Brian, I don't know if you have any final questions.
Final questions that we could talk for hours on this type of thing. One of the biggest thing is I want to thank our customers and our fans for joining us here today. We've got a lot of your comments. A lot of us, we're not able to address every comment right now. What we will do, and I invite Jim and Jimmy to take a look at some of the comments here too. We're going to go back through every single one of those. We're going to give you a little bit of an answer. You could always message us. We really like this contact with you. So again, for our fans and customers, really for FM3 and for the series and USCA and all of that, Summit Racing, I just want to say, thank you for joining us here today.
Yeah, like us on Facebook, subscribe to our YouTube channel, look us up on Instagram, every social platform we've got a presence on. And Jim and Jimmy, if you want to mention Optima's ways to get in touch with y'all, that would be great too.
We actually have your Pinterest board on our Pinterest account too, but I don't see you guys there very often. But we're in all the same places.
Yep,
Twitter,
and we are driveusca.com and fm3marketing.com, and there's a lot of information out there. And my email is jimmy@driveusca.com. Feel free to email me with any questions that you might have. I'm happy to get back to you.
Awesome. And with that, I guess everybody wave goodbye.
Yep. Thank you guys so much. Always good talking with you guys.